to AARP Illinois, our virtual presentation of bike safety with our partners at the Active Transportation Alliance. This is the first of a three-part series to celebrate our partnership with Active Transportation Alliance around this year's Bike the Drive event. Bike the Drive is coming up September 1st, downtown Chicago along DuSable Lakeshore Drive. We'll have information available on our website and on the Active Transportation Alliance website for information about how to register for the event. And at our next virtual event in August, we'll have the opportunity to sign up directly through a QR code on this program. But for now, we want to start the conversation around the basics of bike safety. Very pleased and excited to welcome our guest, Edwin Cerna, who works with the Active Transportation Alliance in the city of Chicago as a bike safety ambassador. Edwin's going to walk us through the basics of bike safety, both as a bicyclist and as a motorist, sharing the street with bicyclists. And we're very excited to hear from him today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Edwin. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Adam. Yeah, so today we're going to go over kind of bike safety 101. And I think we could get started now. If you want to cue up the slides. Thank you. So yeah, so bike safety 101. I'm Edwin. Once again, I work for Active Transportation Alliance. But I am a consultant for the city, for the Chicago Department of Transportation, for the Chicago Safe Ambassador Program. SAFE is actually an acronym that stands for Streets Are for Everybody. And if I go to this next slide, here's a kind of overview of what we do. We're the traffic safety and education team for the Chicago Department of Transportation. And you could kind of tell from our logo and our kind of name, we want to make sure that everyone gets around safely, no matter what form of transportation you use. And we try to focus in these mobility and economic hardship areas where we typically see the most amount of crashes or crashes with injuries happen. So we try to focus in these areas, try to improve the safety, talk to people, and have everyone stay safe in Chicago. So we do only work in Chicago, but it's great to talk to at this webinar with AARP and talk to everyone in Illinois or even beyond, and try to share this message of trying to be safe because people are just trying to get from one place to another, and we shouldn't have to worry about getting into a crash. So let me go on. So biking 101. The first thing we like to start off with is why would I even bike? So we have 4 reasons for why someone might bike. You might want to bike because of these 4 reasons, maybe only 2, maybe only 1, or you might have another reason that you might come up with. But these are kind of the 4 general reasons someone might bike somewhere. So the first one, it is fun. So of course, biking is a lot of fun. I like to bike because I like to feel the wind in my hair and in my face. I like to go outside. And then here are some other reasons because it's fun. Of course, it's a sense of freedom. You don't have to rely on public transit. You don't have to really rely or worry about traffic. So it's a lot of freedom. You get to explore and adventure. So you might see different parts of a city or area that you might have not explored if you were in a car. There's a social aspect of biking as well. You're doing this same activity with a lot of other people. That could be very fun. Also, it's a physical challenge, and that could be sort of a way for you to have fun. You get to push yourself a little if you want to go on a long bike ride. So moving on, it is also a form of exercise, and is also a low impact form of exercise. So it's better on your knees than running. So if you struggle with your knees, don't have good knees, or your knees are hurting, biking is a good form of low impact exercise. Also improves your cardiovascular health. It's a good exercise for your brain, so it boosts your mood and also reduces stress. So those are all good reasons for why exercise is one of those other reasons. Next, we want to move on to biking is very good for the environment. I know as we kind of start to experience some of the effects of climate change, global warming, like more severe weather. I like to bike because it's a very good form of exercise. It's very good for the environment because you don't have to put gasoline in your bike, and of course we know once that gas is burned, it's not good for the environment. But also, it helps reduce air pollution in your neighborhood as well. So not only is it good for the entire Earth, it's also good for your neighborhood. So better air quality for your neighborhood overall if you are biking. And lastly, of course, biking can be a form of transportation. Um, this is one of the big reasons I bike. I bike year round in Chicago. I don't own a car, so I choose to bike all over. And I've actually biked over the last 2 years. I've biked around 8,000 miles, mainly in Chicago. So I think it's a great form of transportation because it's cheaper than driving, a lot cheaper. So I don't have to worry about spending money on gas. Don't have to worry about parking tickets. Um, and also, it could be also a faster form of transportation than driving. There was a study done a couple years back that showed if you're going under 3 miles or less, biking will generally get you there quicker than driving because, of course, you don't have to worry about traffic. You don't have to worry about finding parking, especially here in the city. And also, you don't have to worry about paying for parking. All that takes a lot of time, and generally, you'll get there quicker than in the car. So, one other thing you might have noticed with the 4 reasons that we came up with is it is also an acronym. So, if you take the first letter of each of the words we came up with, it spells out feet. So, you use your feet to bike, and you could also remember the reasons for why you might bike with feet. So, let's move on. So biking seems like this perfect form of transportation or perfect way to get around, right? But it's not always the most perfect way to get around if you are not prepared. So when you do go on a bike ride, we always like to be prepared in the case something were to happen. So the first thing we're going to get prepared with is the most important thing we have to have before we go on a bike ride, and that is a helmet. Um, in Illinois or in Chicago, there is no mandatory helmet law, but we like to recommend that you should always wear a helmet, even if you're going down the street on your bike, because you never know what's going to happen, and you can't predict what other people are going to do around you. So you could be the greatest bike rider in the world, but you can't predict if another person is going to do something wrong and might cause damage to you. So we want to protect that most important piece of our body, which is our brain. So always wear your helmet. So you might choose to wear a helmet. So in Chicago, I see a lot of people wearing their helmet, which is great, but I also see a lot of people wearing their helmet improperly, to where it's not protecting their head to the fullest extent. So we like to go through a little helmet check to make sure your helmet is fitted properly and protecting your head to the fullest extent. So first is finding the right size helmet. So your helmet should fit snug on your head, should not fit too tight, but also not too loose. So usually helmets have wheels in the back here. So you want to tighten the helmet until it is snug. So this is my helmet right here. So size it. I have the right size helmet right now. And the second part of this, or the first part, is positioning the helmet. So you want to position this helmet to where it's not all the way back here. See a lot of people riding their bikes like this, but you want to have at least 2 fingers. Your helmet should be at least 2 fingers above your eyebrows, and that's to ensure that it's protecting your forehead. The next step is adjusting the straps. I know these straps can sometimes get confusing or they could get tangled. Try to have a position or have the straps not tangled just so it makes it easier and more comfortable to wear. But you also want to have these earpieces. Let me turn this way. These straps should form a Y right under your ear. And this plastic buckle is usually adjustable and it should sit right under your earlobe. And that's to ensure that if your helmet or you were to fall and crash, your helmet doesn't shift as much and catches on your ear. So position those straps to form a Y right there. Next step is to buckle the helmet, and it should fit not too tight, but also not too loose. So you still want to be able to breathe, be comfortable. And so let's buckle this. Mine's a little too tight right now, but let me adjust it. And when it is the proper tightness and just snug enough, you should be able to open your mouth and feel a slight tug on these straps. So if I open my mouth, I feel the helmet kind of pulling down on me, and that's perfect right there. And the last check is just a general shake test. So you want to shake your head, and the helmet should not feel loose or wobbly at all. So that is the helmet check that we do. And one other thing I'll mention is helmets do expire. They do have an expiration date, just because as they get older, the foam in the helmet tends to harden. And when that foam hardens, it's not going to absorb the impact if you were to crash as much as possible. So they usually have expiration dates inside or a manufacturer date. My helmet right here, I do not. I think I see a manufacturer date. So we'd like to say helmets typically last 5 years from that manufacturer date. But you might also notice that your foam, it might be less than 5 years, but if your foam's kind of deteriorating, kind of falling apart, you want to replace that helmet. So that is helmets. So be sure to always wear that before you do go on a bike ride. Next thing you want to have or check before you go for a bike ride is to make sure that your bike is safe to ride. You don't want to be out there on your bike ride and last minute find out that your brakes aren't working or your chain is rusty. So we have a kind of 4-part check or 5-part check that is going to check your bike to make sure it's safe to ride. And this check is really quick. It really only takes 5 to 10 seconds, and it's something you should be doing every time. So it is the ABC quick check. So kind of each letter or word is going to check for something on the bike to make sure it's safe to ride. So A is going to stand for air. So of course, air is very important on a bike because if you did not have air in your bike, in your tires, you're going to be pedaling a lot harder. It's going to be harder to go longer distances. So in order to check the air quickly, you just squeeze the tire. Should feel like a properly inflated basketball. But we recommend checking the air pressure every month or so. So to check the air pressure, of course, you need to have a bike pump. And you want to see what's the range of PSI or the amount of air you can put in the tire. That's typically on the side, and it's measured in pounds per square inch. And it's typically a range. Let's say it's 55 to 95 PSI. We recommend going 10 under the recommended PSI, just to account for if it's hot outside, air typically expands as it gets warmer. So usually try to go 10 under, and we recommend doing that every month or so, just to make sure that your tires are properly inflated. The next thing we're going to check are the brakes. So to check their brakes, typically most bikes have hand brakes. So you're just going to squeeze both hand brakes when you're standing beside the bike. You're going to try to push the bike. The bike should not move, or the wheels should not turn at all. That's how you check your hand brakes. I know some bikes still have coaster brakes where you pedal backwards. It makes your bike stop. So to check those coaster brakes, just flip over your bike on its seat and handlebars, spin the crank, and spin it backwards. And if that rear tire stops, your coaster brakes are working. The next thing we're going to check is C, and that C is going to stand for chain. The chain is probably one of the most important pieces of your bike, because if you didn't have a chain, you would have a scooter. But to check the chain, we mostly have to worry about rust. So rust is not good for metal. It eats away at that metal. And if you have a rusty chain, your chain could snap. So the way we check our chain is that we want to make sure there's enough chain oil on our chain. To check that, you're simply just going to touch the chain, and some black kind of stuff should come up on your finger. That's just chain oil that might have picked up a little dirt. It's totally fine. But if you touch your chain and it's completely dry, you need to put some bike chain oil on that chain. So that's C for chain. Quick stands for quick release levers. So these levers are typically on the wheels and also the seat. So we want to make sure those are nice and kind of flat against the bike. If they're out, that means they are open. So they make sure they're nice and flat against the bike, just to make sure our wheels don't fall off and our seats are not moving as we ride. And the last final check we're going to do is just pick up the bike and drop it a couple inches. This just ensures that on our ride, nothing's going to fall off our bike. And also we could hear to see if anything's loose right now. We could tighten it while we're home. And that is the ABC quick check. So again, I've kind of explained it in more detail, but again, this takes only 5 to 10 seconds. But yeah, let's move on. Okay, so another way to be prepared is also considering what you're going to wear and what you're going to wear for the changing seasons. So like I said, I bike year round, and layering, especially in colder weather, is really important, because when you start riding, let's say on a 40-degree day, you might be cold initially, but as you start riding, you're starting to sweat and starting to get hotter and hotter. So you might want to take off a little light layer at a time as you start progressing through that ride. Consider the weather. So again, if it's going to rain, dressing for that. Also dressing for visibility. So wearing bright colors is very important. Also considering if it is colder, protect those extremities, because those are going to be the parts of your body that get cold the quickest. And choose the appropriate shoes. I would not recommend biking in sandals, just because if you do, let's say, clip something, let's say a rock or something, while you're biking, you don't want to hurt your toes or anything. You really want to have closed-toed shoes when you are biking. And yeah, so again, being prepared before you do go on that bike ride. Let's move on. So when you are on your bike ride, again, we're still getting prepared. Again, wearing bright colors. You want to be as visible as possible, because again, a bike is a lot smaller than a vehicle. So it's going to be a lot harder for other people outside to see you than, let's say, than to see like a car, for example. So you want to be as visible as possible. So one way to do that is wearing bright colors. If you are riding at night, most cities in Illinois do have a light requirement for bicycles. I could only speak to the laws in Chicago right now. In Chicago, there is a law. The law states that if you're riding at night on a bike, you at least you have to have a white headlight and a red rear reflector. Even though the law states you only need to have a red rear reflector in the back, we recommend having lights for the front and back. So white headlight in the front, red tail light in the back. So just like a car. So use those lights at night. Could also use them during the day. And not only can you be seen, you also want to be heard. Um, just like motorcycles have loud tailpipes to be heard, because again, motorcycles are a lot smaller than cars. You can also be heard on your bike by making noise. So if you're passing someone on a trail, you could say on your left. Um, Also, you could ring your bell to notify drivers that you are around them, and that is being visible. Let's move on. Um, so we're starting to get into kind of more of the safety aspects of how to ride your bike safely. So um, one way to be as safe as possible while riding your bike is to be predictable. So making sure that people around you know what you're going to be doing next 5 seconds down the road. And one thing with that is following the rules of the road. This is very important because bicycles are considered vehicles of the road. They're technically slow moving vehicles. So a bike has the same rights to the road as a car, but they also have to follow the same rules of the road as a car. So stopping at stop signs, stopping at red lights are very key to keeping yourself safe as a bicycle rider. Next is to ride with traffic, not against. I think it was probably in the 50s and 60s. People were taught to ride against traffic because I guess you could see what that car or vehicle was going to be doing, if they were going to be doing as they come approaching you. But that is more dangerous because if you were to get into a head-on collision with a vehicle, it's going to be a lot more severe than if a vehicle were to hit you from behind. Also, like I mentioned, bicycles are considered vehicles of the road, so you have to ride with traffic the same way that cars are driving, so in the same direction. Also, a vehicle or people, let's say, crossing the street might not be expecting a bicycle to be coming the wrong way. So most of the time, a lot of crashes happen because simply because people are expecting you to be coming against traffic. So remember to stay to ride with traffic. Another thing, just like a vehicle, we want to make sure to signal before we are going to make a turn, just like a car. Same thing on a bicycle. Again, most bikes don't have turn signals. So what we simply resort to is just using our hands to signal. So we just simply stick out our left hand to signal left, stick out our right hand to signal right. And for stopping, we're just going to simply put our hand back. Stopping most of the time is we most of the time only use it for if we're riding with other people, just to signal that we're going to be stopping. Let's say if we're getting off or we're stopping for a red light or a yellow light. That's how we would signal. I know some people signal by. So let me go like this. So this would be I'm turning right. This is still technically correct, but most people do not know this signal for turning right. So we just simply point to where we're going because it's more universal. More people know that if I'm pointing to where I'm going, that's where I'm going to be going. So use those hand signals. And I think last thing with predictability is to ride in a straight line as much as possible. So this kind of diagram shows that if you're riding a bike, try not to weave in and out of traffic. Also, I see this a lot at intersections. So if a bicycle rider is coming to an intersection, I see a lot of people migrating or heading towards the curb just to stay out of vehicles' ways. But if you go all the way to the right, it might signal to a driver that you're gonna be turning right, um, when you're gonna be going straight. So try to stay in a straight line as much as possible. Try to look ahead, and if you see parked cars, try to position yourself to where you can only go in a straight line. Try not to go in and out. It's just unpredictable, and people aren't gonna know what you're gonna be doing next. Um, and that is predictability. So next, we're going to be covering some of the most common crashes between a bicycle and a car. And one of the most common types of crashes is when someone in the bicycle gets hit by an opening door. So this is called getting doored. So if you are riding in the street, um, try not to ride right next to parked cars because, again, you can't predict when someone is just going to open their door, and hitting a door is kind of like hitting a brick wall because it's a stationary object. Or what could also happen is that you get clipped by that door and you get thrown out into moving traffic, which is, again, never good. So one way to protect yourself from this door is to not ride in the door zone. Um, we like to say that we would wish that everyone would look before they open their door. That most of the time does happen, but we never want to take that risk. So to avoid this door zone, you want to ride 3 feet from parked cars. If there is a bike lane, you want to ride on the left-hand side of the bike lane. Bike lanes are typically 4 to 5 feet. The ones you see kind of next to parked cars. If there is a sharrow, these sharrows are placed 4 to 5 feet from parked cars as well. So try to ride in that middle of that sharrow. That gives you a good indicator that you are out of that door zone. So don't get doored. Try to ride 3 feet from parked cars. And a lot of people think that it might be more dangerous to ride closer to moving traffic. But in reality, we see more crashes happen with doors than cyclists getting hit from behind. Again, you're a slow moving vehicle. Cars have to find the appropriate time and place to pass you safely. So never ride next to parked cars. Move on. So like I said, we would wish that everyone would look before opening their door, but I know drivers have to deal with a lot of things, or you might be having a lot going on. You might forget. I sometimes forget, which I try not to forget. But one way to not forget is to use the Dutch reach when opening your door. So what the Dutch reach is you're going to use the hand opposite from the hand closest to the door handle. So let's say I am in the driver's seat, just like you see in this kind of picture. So instead of using my left hand to open my door, I'm going to use my right. This forces me to turn, look in my mirror, forces me to, when I open my door, I can't open the door as wide. Also, I could crack the door a little bit and look in my blind spot as well. So it's kind of a one-part motion to where I could check my mirror, crack the door open, look in my blind spot, and if no bikes or scooters or skateboarders are coming, I could open the door and exit the vehicle. So this can be done also in the passenger seat and a one-way street as well. So instead of opening the door with my right, if I were a passenger on the right-hand side of the vehicle, could open the door with my left. So this is the Dutch reach. It could be done by everyone in the vehicle, and this is taught in the Netherlands from a very young age. Again, the Netherlands are kind of the biking mecca of the world. So they try to keep bicyclists safe because there are a lot of them out there, and we hope that everyone can use this Dutch reach so people don't get doored anymore. So again, kind of sticking with some laws in Illinois specific to vehicles. There is a 3-foot minimum passing law for cyclists. So you have to give at least 3 feet from the widest part of that bicycle and the widest part of your vehicle, which is typically that side mirror. So at least 3 feet. And recently in Illinois, they passed a law that makes it legal to pass a double yellow in order to pass a cyclist safely. So typically, again, double yellows mean you can't cross. But now you can cross that double yellow as long as it is safe to do so. So that is something new for Illinois specifically. So give at least 3 feet of space. So back to kind of common crashes with bicycles and vehicles, and that is the right hook. The right hook happens when a bicycle, which typically travels on the right-hand side, and this bicycle is traveling straight, but this vehicle is turning right. So as you can see, there's a little conflict zone there. So as a bike rider, you do have the right of way. But again, as a bicycle rider, you're very vulnerable. You don't have the same protections that you do in a car. So we try to recommend riding defensively. So in this right hook scenario, so if you're approaching an intersection, look out for turn signals. If you see a vehicle with a turn signal, I will typically stay behind them and try to be visible to the next car behind them. So for example, in this picture, you could see that bicycle rider staying invisible to that blue car, but staying behind that kind of yellow tan car. Also avoid blind spots. Again, if you're riding through an intersection and you're right beside this car, you can't really see their turn signal. Also, that person in the car should check their blind spot, but in the case they don't, you don't want to be right next to them and have them turn and hit you when they're turning right. Again, if you are a driver, one way to avoid this, again, using that turn signal, I like to look out for their turn signals. I will typically stay behind just to not risk getting into a crash. Also, looking before you turn right. I know most people won't expect to turn to look right because there's no other vehicles. But again, biking is becoming more and more popular, and you should be always looking before you turn for not only cyclists but also people in that crosswalk. Move on. Also, another common crash is the left hook. So this typically happens at busier intersections. So let's say these cars have a green light, but this green car is not proceeding through the intersection to not block traffic because that red car is kind of stuck in traffic up there. But what this tan car might not realize is that this bike lane is clear and there is no traffic. And this bicycle rider does have the right of way since they are proceeding straight. And the green car might stop. That might signal to this tan car, oh, it's safe to go. But they might not expect this bicycle rider, and a collision occurs. So if you are bike riding, you should approach intersections cautiously, and again, still avoiding those blind spot zones. So try to be visible to where that tan car can see you. So if you can, proceed cautiously, go in front of that green car so that tan car can see you. Again, if you are a driver, you could also proceed through these intersections cautiously, and always expect someone to be in that bike lane going straight. Let's move on. So that kind of covered our common crashes that we typically see. These are common crashes more specific to the city. There might be other common crashes, like if you are riding in more rural areas where that 3-foot law really is a big thing because typically there's no bike lane infrastructure. So you are riding out on the road. We might see more crashes occur when vehicles are passing too closely. So again, try to stay visible and always ride defensively, because again, you don't have a lot of protection while you're riding your bike, and you want to stay as safe as possible. But a big thing that we see with collisions is that speed is a big problem. I'll cover this very briefly, but speed limits are very, very important for a reason. In Chicago here, we have a speed limit of 30 miles per hour unless otherwise posted. And the big reason for that is because if someone were to get hit by a car going 30 miles per hour, they have a 55% chance to live, which isn't great, but it's over 50. They are looking into lowering that speed limit to 25, just because, as you guys can see, someone were to get hit going 20, they have a 95% chance to survive, which is it's pretty good. But again, people typically don't go the speed limit, right? People typically go 5 to 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, and you all can see the drastic jump or the drastic decrease in survival rate that we see here. So if someone's going 40, they only have a 15% chance to survive. So that drops a lot from just going 30 to 40 miles per hour, which in a car might not seem like you're going that much faster, but you guys can see the consequences here of speeding. So consider that when you are driving anywhere. So follow that speed limit because it's there for a good reason. So I kind of was mentioning bicycle or cyclists as being the most very vulnerable, right? So compared to someone in a car, which if you think about a car, it's a big metal box that has seatbelts, that has airbags, and all these safety features to keep people safe in cars, which is great. Safety technology in cars has come a long way, but a person on a bicycle, if you think about it, most people only wear their helmet, and you're very vulnerable when you're out there. So another person or transportation that's also very vulnerable are people walking. So our laws in Chicago and also in Illinois are structured to where we want to give that most vulnerable person the highest priority, because again, they're the most vulnerable, and we want to give cars and these other vehicles the lowest priority. So if you think about crosswalk laws, again, if a person is approaching or in a crosswalk, they do have the right of way because again, they're the most vulnerable. And like the 3-foot passing law, again, we want to keep cyclists safe, which are the most vulnerable. So think about this when you are outside. I know when people drive, they kind of get into this mindset of being the king of the road and everyone around them should give them the priority. But again, think about this and think about who's the most vulnerable out there next time you're driving. Okay, so we talked about this most vulnerable road user, right? But how can we protect that vulnerable road user? So we're going to go over some ways that Chicago has implemented new and safer infrastructure to protect this vulnerable road user. So over the last couple years, the city has installed more than 100 miles of bike lanes in Chicago, and more protected bike lanes as well. So these protected bike lanes are either protected through these plastic bollards. These plastic bollard protected bike lanes are getting upgraded to this concrete curb protected bike lane. So having a physical barrier between bicyclists and people in cars. So not only is this safer for people on bikes, of course, but also and a person in a car, you're not as worried or stressed out about giving that 3 feet of space, which I know it can be a little stressful and kind of not too sure on how to proceed. So this gives physical separation, much more comfortable to drive, and also much more comfortable for people on bikes. Some other pieces of infrastructure are bike boxes. So these bike boxes allow people on bicycles to turn left. So this person on this bike in this left picture, if they did want to proceed left, they could go through this intersection, use that left-hand side of that green box in front of that vehicle, signal to that driver that they're going to be turning left, and they could do turn left and proceed left. This picture on the right is again as an example of a bike box, to where this person on the bike can do this two-part step to turn left. So instead of kind of merging into traffic and trying to go in a left turn lane, they could proceed through the intersection on this green light, kind of turn left in this green box, and then wait for the next light to proceed through that intersection. So it's kind of a two-part step, but it's a lot safer and more comfortable to turn left than having to merge with traffic and proceed left.
Sometimes you can't change lanes to turn left, as it can be intimidating going across a lane of traffic and positioning yourself in the middle of an intersection. Occasionally, the intersection has a sign prohibiting left turns. The box turn offers bicyclists a safe way to make left turns. For a box turn, ride across the street to the other side and align your bike with traffic. Bicyclists now need to receive two separate green signal indications, one for the through street followed by one for the cross street. Left turn bike boxes provide a formal queuing space for bicyclists making a box turn. They are typically found at multi-lane signalized intersections from a right side bike lane. Left turn bike boxes may also be used at unsignalized intersections to simplify turns from a bike lane. Not only does the queue box offer cyclists a safe way to turn from cars, but it also separates turning cyclists from through cyclists. This configuration may also increase delay for cyclists due to the need to wait for appropriate gaps in crossing motor vehicle traffic.
Some other pieces of infrastructure that you might see here in Chicago specifically are counterflow lanes. So these lanes are typically on one-way streets for cars, but there is infrastructure in place to allow bikes to go against traffic. So these are typically found on more calmer side streets. Allows kind of safer route for bicycles where they might not be comfortable riding on a bigger, larger street. So these are counterflow lanes, and these are typically marked very well for people in cars. So again, that person on the bike has the right to go in that other lane going against traffic, but vehicles do not. So we talked about infrastructure, but another thing about being prepared, which is a big thing with riding a bike, is route planning. So route planning is probably the most important thing to either have a comfortable and safe ride or not having a comfortable and safe ride. So route planning is very, very important because you could, again, plan for safety. So planning ahead to avoid busier roads or high traffic areas, and altering your route to maybe going on more bike lanes and bike paths. So it might be a little safer. Efficiency. So you could also save time and energy by, specifically here in Chicago, we have diagonal streets, which allow you to go faster in a shorter amount of distance because the street's going diagonal instead of having to go north and then west. So you could plan for efficiency and also enjoyment. Again, planning for a bike path that might be more scenic, less stressful, and also planning for weather. So you might plan a route based on certain streets that have a lot of shade, and specifically on a hot, sunny summer day. So plan that route next time you go on for that bike ride. And that concludes our presentation. If you want to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok, we are very active on there, and we like to share some cool funny and informational content on there, and kind of keeping up with us and all the different things we're up to. So if you would like to follow us, please do. And thank you for your time, and stay safe out there.